Hey, Bills Mafia. We know there's only one topic every day. All Bills, all the time. And now Matt Bovee and Sal Capaccio are going really deep, talking Bills all year long, because it's always game day in Buffalo.
Well, it's real. I mean, not that it wasn't already real that the Bills lost in the AFC Championship game and their season's over. Once you get to like end of season press conferences and you hear from the coach and the GM, they start talking about the 25 offseason. It just hits a little bit different, Matt. You know what I mean? Like it's like you realize the postmortem is right here.
It feels like I said earlier today, it's the last day of school, except nobody's excited. That's what today feels like, basically, where you're there, you're saying goodbye to everybody for the last time for a couple months. The coaching staff is getting ready to leave. The front office, obviously, they're very busy right now. But yeah, it definitely feels real. It just all happened so fast. I mean, right? Yeah. At this time, a week ago, we were not even, I was just getting to Kansas City. You were getting ready for the last practice of the week. And then it just kind of comes to an end. It all happened so fast.
It did. And, we're going to talk about today here on Thursday. Matt and I both were down at One Bills Drive for the end of season press conferences for Bills general manager Brandon Beane, followed by head coach Sean McDermott. Combined, they spoke for over 2 hours, 1:15 for Beane and an hour for McDermott. And I just want to say, as a media member, that's cool, right? I mean, like, you don't get that in most places. I appreciate them sticking around until every last question was asked, basically, right?
Yeah, I think today was super interesting.
Really good.
On a lot of fronts. And I think that usually at the end of the year, teams are a bit more open with kind of their true thoughts, because what do they have to lose? The season is done. It's not like they're trying to convey a message or have some sort of competitive advantage. But I think there's some really interesting little layers to a lot of what was said today. I think for some of it, you have to read between the lines, but that's what we're here for. We're here to share kind of how we read between the lines and what we took away from today.
Yeah, for sure. So we're going to get into it, and we're going to share our thoughts on what both guys had to say. And there was some very interesting stuff. I will say one thing. I went on WGR 550 later in the afternoon, and I used the word, I think for fans, for a lot of us who kind of we were invested in this team, I think today was therapeutic in a lot of ways for me.
Yeah.
And I don't know if every fan got this sense, but for me, therapeutic meaning like it's been a rough few days trying to really kind of reconcile this season ending the way it did again when you're preparing for the Super Bowl and all that. And it's been tough to kind of think about it and get over it. Everybody's hurting, right? The fans are hurting. And I think when you listen to Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott talk, you get that renewed sense of hope again. And, we're going to keep swinging, Brandon Beane says, and keep kicking at the door. This isn't going to be a reset year. It's not a rebuild year, those kinds of things. So I think today was a bit therapeutic. So from my perspective, it helped in that regard. I hope it did for the fans, but let's get into it. I'm just going to start and ask you, Matt, give me one like major overarching big point you took away from today from either guy about anything.
Okay. I have a weird one. So I don't know if this is a little bit too specific, but it's the thing that keeps kind of playing in the back of my head. So much so that it was one of the first things that I wanted to go find the video of after it was done. Did you notice the way that they talked about James Cook, specifically Sean McDermott?
I did notice how McDermott talked about Cook, and like he almost described him as like this entity that's not human, the way that he kind of went about his business.
Well, to me, it was like, okay, he's getting an extension. Like they are going to pay James Cook. That's the way that I took it. I was like, man, the way that they're talking about this guy, it feels like he is going to be kind of the next guy. It feels like they are building their offense around Josh Allen and James Cook, almost in the way for all of these years we thought about Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs. It feels like they think they have found their next Robin to Batman, if that makes any sense. I don't know. It was just one of those things.
Did Beane say anything? Did Beane say anything specifically that got you there, or was it just because of the way McDermott praised him?
It was the way Sean praised him, just because it's so unique for Sean to do that. I would say so. That's like one of the more specific things that stood out. I also think they both realized that the defense wasn't good enough and that they do have serious strides that need to be made there. I think that's self-aware, and I also think that's correct. I don't think that, you could look at the defense from this past year and say, well, let's just run it back. I think they realize that they need a game wrecker or two specifically on that side of the ball.
Yeah, that's good. And I agree with you. I'm going to go to something also very specific. I think one of the bigger takeaways from me was really how honest Brandon Beane was about Keon Coleman.
Yeah.
And when rarely have we really ever heard Brandon Beane use the word disappointed when he talked about a player. And let me put it in context for everybody, okay? What he said was he was a bit disappointed in Keon after the injury, and there was lack of physicality there, and really the play wasn't up to the standard after the injury. You know, I'd like to go back and go to get the quotes, and I don't want to take.
I have it because I actually wrote like kind of 5 big takeaways, so I can give you the actual quote. I did not see the same player down the stretch from a physicality standpoint. And some of the things when we need to use the size. Some of that is youth. Some of that I'm not sure how many injuries he has had to overcome in a season and then come back. That takes a certain experience level, maybe how to deal with an injury, how to return, and how to work your way back into the lineup, because we keep playing games whether you're out of the lineup 4 weeks, 5 weeks, or whatever it was for him. And then I went and looked at the numbers specifically. This is crazy. In 3 playoff games, Keon Coleman was targeted 8 times. He caught 3 passes for 22 yards. And if you're like, okay, well, that sample size is small. In the final 4 games where he came back in the regular season after the injuries, listen to this. He had 21 targets. He caught 7 passes for 139 yards and a touchdown. The touchdown was the play against the Jets on that one where Josh rolled to the right and he kind of high pointed the ball.
And he lost him,
But it's not good enough to have 21 targets for 7 catches.
Yeah, that's not good. And
that was very
I didn't
telling.
see the same player. The word disappointed. That struck me because usually we do not hear Brandon Beane talk like that. Now, he also went on to say, hey, I think you do have to give him a little bit of grace. He's a young player. He's learning to overcome an injury, right? And I do think there's room there. He talked about, you might have it there, about how they talked with him about this, right? At the exit interview. And they
said they were honest. They were open and honest with him.
There you go. Open and honest. So we can imagine what that conversation was. It could very well be, hey man, like you got to be more professional to come back ready to play. This team, I imagine something in there along the lines that would be like, this team doesn't stop playing because you're hurt, right? Like you got to come back and be a part of it. And we're relying on you. But it could have been also a little more than that, right? It could have been some people that I talked to said, I bet you that they really kind of chewed him out. I don't know if you'd go that far. I don't know what it would sound like, but it sounds like it was something that definitely needed to be, that they really wanted to make sure they told him.
Well, I mean, they could have said, I'm not saying they said this because this is probably a little bit too harsh, but like we lost our last game by a field goal, and every play that we could have made could have been a difference in us playing for the Super Bowl. And he caught 1 pass in the game. Yep. And I know that the role changed along the way, but like they needed a guy. Like, I mean, even the decision to throw the goal line fade or the fade in the red zone, it wasn't a goal line fade. It was at the 5 or something.
I didn't like that.
It was awful. And it didn't even look like there was an attempt to make the catch. And maybe it was just kind of a bailout ball from Josh where he didn't want it there. But I think that there were a couple players they specifically said things about where the alarm went off. James Cook for the right reasons, and then obviously Keon and a couple other guys for the wrong reasons.
All right. Well, if you're going to say wrong reasons, I don't know if I'd go that far, but I think one of the guys you're probably talking about more on that side would be Dalton Kincaid. Yeah. Because what they specifically said was Dalton needs to get stronger and bigger. And some of this is durability, right? Yeah. He was fighting through injuries. And if you can get stronger, that's going to help your body take more punishment. It's going to help your body fight through those injuries, recover quicker. We know we dealt with some injuries this year. He certainly did not have that next step year. And even, I think Sean McDermott even used those terms, didn't take that step up in year number 2. But it was very interesting how they both talked about Dalton Kincaid. And I think they both also showed and reaffirmed a lot of belief in Dalton Kincaid. It's his second year. And generally, under this regime, you've seen a much bigger jump from year 2 to 3 than any other year for players in this organization. But I thought that was notable as well about how they talked about Dalton Kincaid.
Yeah, it was not disappointed. That was not the word that they used. So it wasn't as harsh. Maybe it was about Keon Coleman, but they did say that, here's the quote, Dalton didn't have the year he or we expected, not for any particular reason, but injuries played a part in that. I'm paraphrasing the second part of the quote, but it is interesting. Why did it take 2 full years for them to at least have to say this, at least publicly? And where does it go from here? Because the way that they explained it was like, well, he doesn't have the body type that a player like Dawson Knox has, and a player like Dawson Knox is more durable and can kind of withstand the bumps that you take along a season. But obviously they had a much bigger role. And it's not just the injuries, because even pre-injury, PCL, we're talking about in Indianapolis. I mean, Dalton Kincaid averaged more than a catch fewer per game and about 8 yards fewer per game when he played. So it wasn't just when the injury happened, the production declined. It was just he was not utilized nearly as much as we thought going into the season.
Yeah, and I put some of this on the organization, though, because they drafted Dalton Kincaid with Ken Dorsey as the offensive coordinator and talking a ton about 12 personnel. And now that's going to be matchups, and they're going to exploit these matchups. And they wound up firing Ken Dorsey. And it's not that all of a sudden everything changed there, but if you're going to draft Dalton Kincaid in the first round for these matchup specific reasons, you need to see more of those matchup specific reasons. And to me, you can't just insert him into the everybody eats dinner plate and dinner table. And because then why did you draft him in the first round? I think you got to have a better plan for him than that. So I think there's got to be some onus on the player here, but probably some onus on the organization, the offensive philosophy of how you drafted this talent. You think he was talented enough in the first round. I think we all have seen the talent of Dalton Kincaid. I need to see him being used more, to be honest with you. And I'm not saying that it was all on that. He definitely has to be better. But you understand, but I feel like there wasn't a great match there.
Yeah, it felt a bit forced, but at the same time, I don't think it's on the organization for him to make plays when called upon. Like, I feel like you have to earn the responsibility and the extra looks that you're going to get. And I think back to Dalton Kincaid plays from this year, and it's hard because we have the luxury of hindsight here. So I'm thinking of the last play that they had offensively of the season and that drop. But then there's other moments too where it's like, man, he could have maybe made that catch and didn't, or they were just not on the same page. Even the Ravens game, I think they come out of the half and Josh throws him a pretty low ball that he doesn't make the catch on, but it would have been a first down. And it's also one that I think I want my tight end making. It's a hard catch, but it's one that would have continued to drive, obviously would have kept the ball out of the Ravens' hand. There was a good one in the Broncos game like that, but that's a problem. It's a problem that they were up 2 or 3 scores, and that might have been his biggest catch of the season. So I get what you're saying, but I also feel like it was a historically fantastic year for the offense. So what they were doing was working, whether that was with him or not. And I don't think they should have swayed because they did have so much success.
So the other guy you just brought up there a little while ago is Dawson Knox. I mean, who would have thought coming out of this press conference that Dawson Knox was the guy that was held up in the, into the shining light of, hey, this is the standard we want everybody. And I say that in jest, but man, like if you would have told me 2 weeks ago, if you would have asked me, do you think they'll move on from Dawson Knox? I would have said no, but I could see it with his contract. Like I understand like the production, the contract.
No chance.
After today,
no chance.
No way. He is a core player who they really, really love on this team for many reasons.
Yeah, well, they trust him. And I think that that's one of the areas where Dalton needs to grow is he needs to earn the trust consistently of Josh Allen that Dawson has. They trust.
Now, wait, can I stop you for a second? Isn't it funny? Weren't we having kind of a similar conversation about Dawson Knox after his second year?
I don't remember if it was this. Did he get his contract extension after his third year?
He did, because after his second year, it was still about, there were drops. Remember, there was a lot of inconsistency in his game in his second year. And there were a lot of people like, oh my God, this guy can't catch it. And then there was all this stuff about him doing the eye training and all of those kinds of things.
Yeah, with all the tennis balls and stuff.
Yes.
But the difference here is you're talking about a third-round pick compared to a first-round pick that they traded up for. But not to stray away from the point, they specifically singled out Dawson Knox, multiple, Brandon and Sean. Sean was asked, were there any players that kind of exceeded your expectations or were pleasant surprises? He brought up Dawson Knox, then talked for a little bit about Dawson Knox, then got to two of the guys who are soon to be free agents, Ty Johnson and Matt Collins, who this last week I've been like, yeah, there's guys who I definitely think are coming back. Those would be two very, very high on the list for me. So it's funny how they kind of singled those guys out as maybe like a little bit of a public, like, hey, if you're willing to come back, we'd love to have you.
All right, let's stay on the offensive side. There were some questions about Amari Cooper. Beane was interesting. He said he doesn't regret at all making the trade. He said, because if you look, now I haven't done the math to say exactly what it is, but what he said was in the games he played, they averaged 7 more points per game than the games he didn't after the trade, which is interesting. He also said and revealed he might have needed surgery on that wrist, but kind of he played through it. Obviously, we see that the production wasn't quite there. I got the feeling listening. I think I wouldn't be stunned, Matt, if they re-signed him, but I got the feeling it was more of a, yeah, we brought him in. He did some good things for us. We really love him, but we'll probably go in a different direction. I kind of got that feeling there.
Yeah, I think it'll be dictated by the market. If Amari Cooper has a market, I don't think he'll be back. But if he's like a guy who you can take a flyer on, let's say somebody's going to give Amari Cooper a $6 or $7 million a year deal, like a 1-year deal or something, I could totally see them doing that as just like hey, maybe with an actual offseason, he could really be a difference maker for this offense. It's funny, though, how you can sway the stats because Brandon said, hey, we averaged a touchdown more when he was on the field. Well, yeah, you also traded for him after some really bad games for your offense where you scored 10 points against the Ravens and whatever it was, 20 points against the Texans. So their just offense got better after they traded for Amari Cooper. So, yeah, It felt like he dug his feet in a little bit, which is to be expected because he made the move and he gave up a pretty big asset for him. So I wouldn't have thought that he would have been like, yeah, guys, it was on me. It was a bad move. We should have did it because I don't think he feels that way. And I don't feel that way either. At the time, it would be hypocritical to back off of it. I really liked the move when they made it. It just didn't work out as great as I think we thought it would.
All right. Let's go to the defensive side. Unless you have anybody else on offense you want to talk about or anything on offense you want to talk about. Obviously, Josh Allen, just notable for fans out there. Brandon Beane said Josh's wrist injury, his hand injury, whatever Josh referenced throughout the other day, did not come up in their exit interview. So that's good that obviously there's nothing that's pressing with Josh Allen.
He specifically asked, was it broken? He said no. So Josh Allen did not break his hand. He was asked about a possible contract for Josh this offseason.
Yes.
Obviously, he doesn't need one, but he said it's not something we've ruled out. It's also not something that we've, basically like it could happen, it couldn't happen, but they will kind of have those conversations and discuss it.
Okay. Defensively, I asked both men about Matt Milano. I'm very interested about Matt Milano and where they think he is right now. Because
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Did you ask about Matt Milano because you think there's a world where they move on from him?
I do, but more so, I think there's a world.
That's why I thought you were asking.
I did, both of them. More so because I think a lot of fans will be wondering if that's the case. Right, yeah. Right. Like, not that I think Matt Milano's back. Yeah. However, I did ask because I want to be armed with the information when fans say to me, I think they're going to move on from Matt Milano, or I think they should move on from Matt Milano. I want to be able to tell them what Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott said about him. And the reason is already had people telling me, well, if you move on from Matt Milano, I had somebody in the media room today. In fact, all they said, Andy Young looked and said, Sal, they could save as much moving on from Milano as they would moving on from Von Miller, which we'll get to, both post June 1 cuts. I think they're both different cases though in scenarios, but that's the talk for a lot of people. A lot of people have compared Milano to Tre'Davious White of last year. And hey, if you move on, look at this, a guy, he's come back from the injury. He's going to be 31 years old. That's why I asked. I actually personally believe, and I have said this, that I think Matt Milano is coming back and he's going to be the starting will linebacker. The reason I say that is this dude came off the couch after rehabbing. I say off the couch in jest. He was obviously rehabbing, but he didn't even play. And he just immediately became the starter over Dorian Williams. You're going to tell me now that they're going to say, okay, well, now that he's fully healthy, he's not going to be the starter anymore?
Yeah. Well, I think that they need to evaluate if the injury, like the risk of injury is super high, and if they feel like they're going to be put into this position again.
Right.
And it's so random. You can't predict.
He did say something about which one of the guys said something about how we've learned about some of these guys getting older and injuries and something like that.
I can tell you the Bills have made an effort over the years to get younger and kind of reset their roster. It's just very obvious with the way that they've kind of constructed things. But it's tough. I feel like Matt Milano will be back, but I didn't take either of their answers to you today as slam dunk Milano's back answers. They were like, yeah, obviously he's important. We know what he can do. We know what he can bring, but neither of them definitively said.
Well, they didn't definitively say, but what was said was Brandon Beane specifically said, we're gonna armor him, and he's got a full year of rehab, and we're gonna do this with him, and we're gonna do that with him. Like, very much talked about the future of how they're going to proceed with him on the team.
I haven't had time to do it, but I wanted to go back today. It's just been too crazy. I wanted to go back today and listen to how they referred to Jordan Poyer and to Tre'Davious White and to all of these. Because the first thing that I thought of, and this is foreshadowing a bit, but the minute Brandon said, don't expect us to be huge buyers or, take a big swing in free agency, that doesn't mean anything. Because he has said that basically every single year. So there's fans who are like, oh, no, here we go again. They're not going to go do anything. They said that like a couple months before signing Von Miller to a $120 million contract.
That's right.
So I don't really take that for like I take that with a grain of salt, but I did want to go back and see how they referred to the guys that they eventually did move on from.
Well, so everybody is clear, and I'll go to Spot Track on this. Matt Milano's cap hit, if they were to move on from him in 2025, this year, you're not doing it before June 1 because you'd literally be losing $18 million and have no cap savings whatsoever. You're not doing that. It would have to be a post June 1 cut. But even then, Matt, you'd be taking on 11 million in dead cap in 26 and 9 million this year, 11 million next year. It just doesn't feel like something they're going to do. And I'm just going to go back to on the field what I said a little while ago, which is this is a guy that they put right on the field to start, and now he's going to be healthy, and we saw the trajectory. So I think Matt Milano's back. I think you think he's back, correct?
Yeah, and he also looked pretty good in the playoffs.
Yeah.
On a defense where there was some really underwhelming performers in the playoffs, he was not one of them. I don't have an issue with the way he played against the Chiefs, and I think that he's still got a year of really solid football left.
Yeah, sure. And if he plays really solid, he's still under contract for 2 years. You could run this thing for another couple years if you really feel that way about him. Okay.
One other thing. I think you would mirror it with whatever they decide with Bernard in a way, because I don't think they would want to have to figure out something, like what I mean? Like if Bernard gets a new deal, then they would continue with Milano as kind of like the steady guy. So they're not just completely paying a ton at linebacker. I just feel like if they plan on keeping Bernard for another year, or potentially longer, they would just keep Milano's contract as is.
Yeah, Terrell Bernard entering the final year of his rookie deal. Okay, the same can't be said here for Von Miller. I think he will not be on the team, but that's to be decided. They spoke obviously glowingly about what he means to the organization, having the championship mentality in the organization. But if they do move on from him before June 1st, they would save $17 million and take on $6 million. I'm sorry, after June. Okay, let me do this again. If they moved on before June 1st, they would take on $15 million in dead cap, which is tough, but they would save over $8 million. If you make them a post June 1 cut, you'd save 17, but you wouldn't get that 17 until June 1st. It'll be $6 million in dead cap.
Yeah, I feel like that's what they're going to do, though. I feel like they're just going to have to, I don't want to say bargain shop until then, but I feel like they're going to be waiting until June 1st and then maybe trying to make a Leonard Floyd-esque move or one other thing that could potentially pop up down the road when they have a little bit more money.
Well, remember, though, and what you can do is, and they did this last year with Tre'Davious White, you can release Von Miller, but designate him a post June 1 cut. So everybody knows how that works.
Yeah, but you don't have the money.
Right, correct.
Yeah.
He'd physically be off the roster. We wouldn't be waiting till June 1st to hear the news, I guess, is my point.
Yeah.
He'd be physically off the roster in March. He could go on another team, but the Bills, as you rightfully point out, wouldn't actually save that money on the cap until June 1st, and then they could spend it or use it for replacement costs. But Von said Monday when we were down at One Bills Drive, he was very, very much in the camp of, I'm playing next year and I want to be a Buffalo Bill. So that's his side of it.
Do you think that he would do what he did? I mean, the guy doesn't need money. Do you think there's a world where, because Brandon brought up the fact that he was very selfless with his contract and took less guaranteed money. Do you feel like there's a world where part of him doing that was also, hey, we'll keep you another year, but we're going to make your contract half of what we thought it was going to be? Because that's what I think is going to happen.
Okay, I do think there's a world there, and I will tell you, I don't know how much you saw on Monday when you were flying back. Von opened that door. Von said, there's always a way, like we could do something like that. Like he didn't say, I want to go take a pay cut, but he kind of opened the door to some sort of restructure. So I do think that's possible. But here's the other question. Is it the right thing to do for the football team, Matt?
Here's what they'll need to figure out. What if his role is to be, I don't know, because I am going to, for the next 2 months, talk about how they should go trade for Max Crosby. And if you're trading for Max Crosby and you still have Greg Rousseau on your roster, then what the heck are you going to use Von Miller for? Even if he makes $8 million a year or something. So I don't think it's the right move for the actual football team, but I also feel like they still think there's something there to a fault. I wouldn't. I think that you have to cut your losses at some point. But I wonder if this was part of the deal. I wonder if it was, almost like a handshake agreement of if you do this now, we'll keep you another year. Because maybe that is the case.
Do you think Kyer Elam is on the Buffalo Bills opening day roster in any capacity?
Yeah, because I shouldn't say that. I don't think he'll get cut. It just doesn't make financial sense for him to get cut. What I think the two most likely outcomes are that he is on the roster or that he is traded for the last pick of the draft or some sort of ridiculously small asset just so they don't have to have his contract.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I would say.
I pretty much agree with that.
To a team that thinks that they can have a reclamation project or to a team that plays a lot of man coverage. Probably the two options.
I do think there's a possibility he could be cut. But you're right. You'd be taking out $4 million in dead cap. You'd have no savings, which doesn't make sense. But to me, here's the biggest reason why, which is, I mean, are you really, look what happened on Sunday. Like there's gotta be a spot for me. He doesn't offer anything on special teams. And at some point you just maybe have to move on. And if you can't get anything for him, then you might just have to do it and say, we got to have other people that we think can play in those positions. Because the reason I bring it up, Sean was very honest from what we all saw on Sunday. And he said, we tried zone, we tried man, and it didn't work out, obviously. Like I asked him specifically, was there anything you thought about doing differently, including playing Jamarcus Ingram? He did not answer that part of it. Right. Which I didn't expect him to necessarily, but he basically said we tried and it just continued to not go great.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I would lean more towards that. I don't think he is on the team. And then I think that brings us to the next question, which is, what do you think happens with Rasul Douglas? Do you think that Rasul Douglas is back?
At this point, I say no.
Really? Interesting. I think I say yes. I think that
I'm close to 50-50 though, but here's I don't think they give him a big deal. I don't think he has a huge market.
No, I don't think so. I think he bridges the gap with somebody who they draft. So in my head, what I would imagine the cornerback room looks like next year is Christian Benford. If they keep all of their picks, a second round pick corner, Rasul Douglas and Jamarcus Ingram / Cam Lewis, whatever position you want to list him as. Like I could see a world where they try and get Rasul on a 1 or 2 year deal just because him and Christian are both so tight. They draft somebody, but then they don't have to throw that player in right away, almost like they did with Cole Bishop this year.
I like your point about him with Christian. They are very tight.
Like inseparable.
Yeah. And I think that the way that both men talked about this locker room, what it means, I think that matters to them. Mm-hmm. Here's what I would say. I don't think Rasul Douglas is getting a ton of money elsewhere in free agency, right? At this point?
No, I don't think so either.
So think about the Dane Jacksons of the world, the Levi Wallaces of the world. Yeah. I mean, they bring those guys back.
I think he'd get a bigger deal than that though.
Oh, more than the minimum, right? Yeah. More than the minimum.
Dane got a pretty nice contract.
Oh, you think he's getting more than what Dane got from like Carolina? I don't think so.
No, but I think it's close.
Ooh, I don't know if I'm in on that then, to be honest with you.
Would you give him a 2-year, $15 million deal?
No.
Not 15 million per, 15 total. So 7.5. I don't think
so. That's a lot of money for the last 2 years. I think that's too much.
Let me look and see if I can find his evaluation.
While you do that, let me ask you this very interesting question. Would you be interested in bringing Tre'Davious White back on a very small deal?
No.
Okay.
No. Do you think they would?
I think they'd consider it. I think it's less likely.
His over the cap evaluation is $3.4 million a year.
I'm not paying him $7 million.
Okay. Well, okay. I overshot it. You would pay him 3.4 though, right?
Yeah. I'd probably look for about I was going to say 3 to 4. So that makes sense. 3 to 4. Okay. Makes sense there.
No, I wouldn't bring back Trey.
Okay. Defensive side. I don't know. I'm trying to think if there's anything from anybody else that we need to talk about. There was nothing much on Rousseau today, but that is a discussion we're going to have because Greg Rousseau is going into his 5th-year option. And on that 5th-year option, he's guaranteed like $13 million. So here's the decision the Bills have to make. Do they just basically play out Greg Rousseau's 4th year at him counting $13.38 million on the salary cap? Or do they actually give him an extension to lower that money and spread it out? But then you think, well, does he deserve an extension? This is going to be a interesting one.
Yeah, well, he's got a valuation of 17.4 on the on over the cap. So what is his 5th year bonus?
13.3.
13.3. What would
going into the last year of his deal?
I'm so torn on Greg. I think Greg Rousseau is a really good football player, but I don't think you can pay him like an elite pass rusher. I think he's somewhere in the middle. I think if you can get him on like a $17 million is a lot of money. I think it depends also on what you do.
So here's the question. Do you just let him go into this year at 13 million? That's a bargain. And then you can franchise tag him if he has a really good year. Or do you say, well, then if you like him that much, actually what I think they should do, if you like him as much as you like him, which I think he's a really good player too.
I think he's a really good player.
17 mil though, boy, that's a lot of money.
I don't think I could pay it. So here's my thing.
What if it was 13 to 15?
I think you do that. I think you do it because that's about twice what AJ Epinesa makes, which I feel like is right. I feel like Greg Rousseau is a really good player, but I don't think he is a game-changing
no, that's right.
edge rusher. I think he's good against the run, not against Kansas City, but usually good against the run, good at contain. There's a lot of stuff that he's good at, but he is not the type of guy who they have been seeking. I mean, there's a reason they went out and signed Von Miller. There's a reason I'm going to talk about Max Crosby and TJ Watt and, all of these other guys who are potentially out there. So
I guess I'll ask it this way. If you right now, if Greg Rousseau came and said, look, I'll lower my cap number this year, give me a 4-year extension averaging 15 mil per year. You do it?
Yeah, I think I would do that. I think I would do because the thing with Greg Rousseau that's working in his favor is that if he does hit the market, he is super young still, and some team will give him a ton
Tremaine.
It's the exact same thing as Tremaine. Greg Rousseau is 24 years old still, and he has been in the league for 4 years already. Obviously, entering his 5th year. He's 24 years old. So if he said that, hey, give me $60 million over 4. And you're in, then I think that they would do that. But I think his market is substantially higher than that. I think it's probably closer to $20 million a year, if not maybe a little bit over that.
Before I get into coaches, we'll talk about Matthew Smiley in a second. One more on players. After Sean McDermott was done speaking to us, he actually went on WGR Sports Radio 550 with Shope and the Bulldog. I don't know if you heard it. It's a really good conversation. And Shope even said, I don't want to ask you everything you've been asked because you just talk for an hour, so I'll give you something else. He was asked about a field stretcher, and Mike actually asked him kind of to expand on that. There was a different question about it. I came away from these press conferences thinking
they need one.
The Bills are going to actually look for someone who can stretch the field more. Now Sean talked about vertically and horizontally, but it was clear to me the way they both talk that they think that is missing in their offense.
Absolutely.
They need someone to get down the field. I also think it's going to be hard, but I do think Brandon Beane is going to try to get some sort of difference maker on defense.
I think so too. I'm going to keep saying it. I really think Max Crosby is going to be a Bill. I really do. I just think it kind of makes a lot of sense. They liked the player coming out. He's still young. He, I think, works.
They liked him coming out?
Yeah. That was a player that they liked. Okay. Eastern Michigan, right? I think that's right. I think that's right. So I do think that they're going to do something because they talked about how you need to win at the line of scrimmage, and they obviously both were very, very glowing about their offensive line, but I think they know they need some work on the There's also a little hidden thing today. Do you remember Beane made a comment today about how when you lose like this, it makes you think about all those conversations you have and guys you thought you had signed, but you didn't get over the finish line and could have made a difference. Did you notice that when he said that?
I don't think I did. I have to go back and listen.
You know who I was thinking about? What was the guy from San Francisco who was really good, and it looked like the Bills were in on him?
Al Juszczyk, the fullback?
No. On the defensive line, the defensive tackle who ended up going with the Jags.
That was yep.
Armstead? Eric Armstead? Is that his name?
Armstead. Yes, Eric Armstead.
I thought about him. I was like, I wonder if that's what he was talking about. I wonder if he thought that he could be a potential difference maker that they just missed out on. Because I think that was their plan A, and then they didn't get it done, and then they kind of figured, okay, well, Austin Johnson's going to be our depth guy, and then we'll just use some of the other money elsewhere.
All right. So one of the
do you think if they're trying to get a vertical threat wide receiver, does that to you sound like somebody they would try and find in free agency? Does it? Because to me, they can't go into next year with taking a flyer on a 3rd round pick. That can't be what they're talking about. It has to be somebody who's either a premium pick or somebody who's actually played in the league.
Okay, so it's a good question. I'm just going to tell you how I think the organization does business. Not what we try to do. What I try to do on the radio, I tell people this all the time. It doesn't really matter what Sal Capaccio would do. I try to give you what I think the organization will do based on past behavior and how we know these guys operate.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Bills would not draft a receiver in the first round unless he had all of the boxes checked. Can't just be a speed guy. It's why they didn't draft Xavier Worthy in the first round. I think the Bills feel that is such a premium spot and pick. You can't just take a guy just because he stretches the field. So to me, if you want a guy that you think he's getting down the field, that's a free agent. You know who's a free agent actually this year, who was linked to the Bills a little bit last year? Hollywood Brown, the guy they just played. He's had a one-year deal.
Man, what has he done, though, to warrant?
Nothing, because he was hurt. And then he got a couple of catches against Kyrie Elam.
Yeah. Well, maybe they'll try and do the MVS thing again with like a guy who played for the Chiefs and be like, hey, maybe you can come over here and try and help us. And then it doesn't end up doing anything. Yeah, I think right now, if you were like, hey, what do you think happens with their first 3 picks in the draft, assuming that they actually have these picks, my guess would be some sort of combination of defensive tackle, wide receiver, and cornerback. I would say those are the 3 positions that I would feel the most confident that they would be addressing early in the draft. Early is relative. And then
unless they go out and sign a big guy at one of those positions, then completely changes what you think about how they're going to, approach the draft. Obviously that could happen, during free agency. We could see them like all of a sudden they got some great big corner, or they make a trade and you're like, wow, they're not going to need a corner anymore. You got, that guy and Christian Benford. So
who's one other interesting player that I want to bring up?
Yeah.
So I don't think they would do it because it's a little bit too similar to Vaughn, but we are going to talk about Max Crosby and people are going to talk about Myles Garrett and they're going to talk about all these people. Is there any chance the Steelers move on from TJ Watt? So TJ Watt is 30.
Is there a chance?
He's 30 and he's got 1 year left on his contract.
Right.
So to me, if the Steelers aren't going to give him a new deal, which I have no reason to think, but honestly, this stuff comes to the forefront because we've had him on our show before, but like Andrew Filipponi, who covers the Steelers when they're getting blown out in the playoffs, is kind of talking about like all of these guys who he thinks are safe and all these guys that they should explore options for. And one of them was TJ Watt. And then it kind of got to the back of my head. I was like, would they really trade him? But I don't know. Is that even worth the conversation?
I guess there's a chance. I think there's a much more likelihood that TJ Watt signs an extension than he gets traded. There was a report a couple days ago that the Patriots were possibly linked to TJ Watt and making a trade for TJ Watt. I will also tell you, this comes from Mark Caboli, who now works actually for the Pat McAfee show. He used to cover the Steelers, right?
Uh-huh.
This is an amazing stat. You tell me if you still want to do it after this. TJ Watt's last 127 snaps of the season. 0 tackles, 0 assists, 0 sacks.
Oof. Woof. Well, here's the thing. The reason I bring it up is I feel like he would be exponentially cheaper than the other guys.
Yeah, I mean, probably. Okay, well, I'll give you a name. Let me give you a name. Khalil Mack.
No.
Wouldn't do it.
I just
6 sacks this year. He had 17 a year ago.
17, but isn't he 32, 33?
Right.
You
might as well run it back with Vaughn if you're going to do that. I don't know.
I like Khalil Mack, the player. I think that it would be an easy sell because of Buffalo.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I wouldn't give him a massive deal. Like if they want to do the Leonard Floyd contract with Khalil Mack, I'm totally for that. There's not much risk tied to that. But anything more than $6 or $7 million on a 1 or 2 year deal, I just don't see the value in.
One of the big, I guess, concerns, and rightfully so for Bills fans and thoughts, was about special teams and coordinator Matthew Smiley.
Mm-hmm.
And Sean McDermott did acknowledge there were some breakdowns there, but he said Matthew Smiley's coming back. He was specifically asked if Matthew Smiley's coming back. His answer was yes. You tweeted you were surprised by that news.
I am surprised by that news. Are you?
I think I am. But I also think Sean McDermott is generally pretty loyal to his guys, and he really loves Matthew Smiley. And the way he talked about him a few weeks ago about, hey, this guy works really hard. He's smart, just the things that he said. I just never got the feeling that he was itching to do it. And yes, I thought it was very possible. And I've even said they probably do it. So I guess I am surprised, but at the same time, I guess I'm not.
My thing is, with the way the season ended, I feel like it would have been really easy. And that doesn't mean it's always the right thing to do, but it would have been really easy to say, like, hey, the special teams weren't consistent all year. And in the first playoff game, we gave up a fake punt because we had the wrong guys out there. And then the final playoff game, we gave up a huge return that led to a touchdown a couple plays later. Like, the margin for error in this league is so small, and we can't have that happen. So that's kind of why I thought it was going to happen, and why I am surprised by the move. I don't feel super strong either way, because when I posted that, people lost their minds. How in the world could they bring back Matthew Smiley? I agree to an extent, but I'm not like, oh my gosh, this organization is cursed and they're never going to win because of a special teams coordinator. I just am like, special teams coordinator, like, make it work.
Yeah, I hear that for sure. We're going to talk a lot more about the Bills pending unrestricted free agents. They have 17 of them. We'll get into it. I agree with you today that, the way they talked about Ty Johnson and Matt Collins, I think that they're, of the group of the 17, they're probably the two most likely that they would target to resign.
I love the offseason so much. I just am sitting here. Trust me, I really wish that we were having a different conversation right now. But the possibilities in the offseason are endless. Guess what Matt Collins over the cap valuation for next year is?
$3.4 million.
$6.7 million.
I don't think he's getting that.
I don't think so either. I feel like he's, of the two, Matt Collins and Ty Johnson, I feel like Matt Collins is the more likely to be back. Am I right? Do you agree with that?
Sure. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
I just think because they clearly like both of them, but I think if they're going to get, Ty Johnson has a valuation of 2.29, so much, much more manageable. I just think that if you're going to give James Cook a contract, and if you've already got Ray Davis now for 3 more years on a cost-controlled deal, they might just think that they can find another person in free agency to do the Ty Johnson role, even though I don't know if I would agree with that. I would bring back both of them if it was feasible. But you can't pay Matt Collins almost.
No, I don't think so. I don't think so either. I think you get
that's like a $4 million deal.
Give him a 2-year deal for $8-9 million, $9 million, a little bit front loaded bonus, whatever. I think that's, I to me, like, that's a nice deal for a guy like that who earned it and really loves playing in Buffalo.
And they love. I think that matters too.
All right. Anything else from today? Just overarching thoughts that we didn't get to that you want to touch on before we head on out?
Let's see. I have the list in front of me of all of the different topics that they talked about today. I really appreciated, and it's not like it's a surprise that they can do this, but I appreciated Sean McDermott talking about the attention. I thought Sean was good today. I appreciated him talking about the attention to detail on the final drive and going play by play. Yes. The only time he slipped up was on the play that you referenced, that it got batted down by number 90, but he went through the offensive plays on the last drive and was like, this is what happened on this one. This is what happened on this one. It is just incredible kind of how those little things ultimately make the difference, right? Like, a ball gets batted down on a ball that was going to Curtis Samuel. That could have been a big gain. Then on the next play, they see the blitz. They throw a quick screen to Amari Cooper. Karlaftis makes an unbelievable play, gets him down. It puts him in that 4th down situation. And then, the Dalton Kincaid play happens. So it's just interesting to hear those guys talk in that kind of detail about every specific play and how it played out.
Eric Wood always talks about how little mistakes just compound and compound, and that's what happens, and that's the snowball effect, and it's exactly what he talked about. I also asked Sean McDermott today about the 3rd down spot and why he didn't challenge, if he thought about challenging, and if the fact that the team and Joe Brady wanted to go quick to keep the KC personnel on the field they wanted to push against had anything to do with that. He said essentially yes, but he also said he thought the referees should have stopped it. So there should have been a stoppage for them to review it. However, Sean, I give him credit for, he wasn't blaming, because he said, look, we went fast. That probably made the refs go, hey, they're going fast. So, we're not going to do this. We're going to let them do what they need to do. So it's, again, he's like, they're trying to do their job too.
Yeah, I was surprised by that. Not surprised, but I appreciated the insight on that.
Yep.
And I also appreciated the comment from Brandon Beane about how it's like, I thought we got the first down. And then he's like, and even after having the conversations I've had with the league, I still feel like we got the first down. And I just appreciate that. It's not like he lighting the world on fire or anything, but it's sticking to his guns of being
and that he thought that it was either an interception or incomplete or whatever about Cole Bishop, right? I mean, like one or the other there. So yeah, listen.
How about Sean saying that he told the team before the game, listen, you are not going to get the calls. Like, that's an interesting little layer to it as well. Of, he got asked about the officiating, and he kind of got himself painted into a corner. So there's only so much he could say, but the way he got out of it was by saying, listen, I told the team before the game, like, you are not going to get these calls in this game. And that's something within itself. He kind of tap danced back from that, but him admitting that was like, oh, interesting little nugget there.
Yeah, for sure. Brandon Beane said, their goal is still to get the AFC Championship game at home. Now, when I tweeted that out in that quote, there were several Bills fans who said, well, you already lost at home last year and the year before. I think his point is, if you can become the 1 seed, you get a bye week and then 1 win and you're at home for the next game. And I think that's the point he's making. It's not just playing the championship game at home, which is what you want to do. And of course, you'd rather be home than on the road. It's not that you're foolproof at home. It's if you can get the 1 seed, you have a bye week, and then you got to win 1 game, and then you're at home for the AFC title game, and you're much more kind of rested as well because you only played 1 game instead of 2. But all of that is still kind of where they're going, which brings me back to how we started this, which is I think today was a bit therapeutic to hear Brandon Beane say, as long as Josh Allen is here, we will always try to keep winning. We are not rebuilding this thing.
I think that's why I feel pretty convinced that they're going to do something notable or substantial this offseason, because they realize the window that Josh is about to enter into. He is still in his prime for sure, but it took them 4 years to get back to the AFC Championship after going the first time. I don't think they can wait another 4 years, because at that point, Josh is 33, and he's still going to be in the league, and he's still going to be a really, really good player. But he's going to play different at 33 than he plays at he's going to be 29 this year. I feel like they see another window like they saw when they made the Vaughn move to be like, okay, now we're starting another win now window and see how they can do this for the next 3 years.
Yeah, for sure. All right.
And I mean, he admitted the salary cap this year is a lot, not flexible is not the right word, but they have more flexibility and options than they did. I mean, last year they were like $40 million in the hole.
No. So let me. He actually said they don't have as many options this year, but they're in a better place.
He said they were,
because what he said was last year. Yeah, they're in a better place this year. They were last year, but they don't have as many levers to pull this year to shed money. Last year they did, which is why they did it to help them for this year, right? I mean, they did the moves they did last year to help for this year, because this year they don't have all these levers and options they can pull, but they're in a better position where they don't have to do that because of what they did last year.
Well, their levers to pull this year, their easy levers to pull are a Josh Allen extension, which is going to be something that they do, probably some sort of move with Von Miller, which is going to be something that they do. I think there is a potential that they do something with Connor McGovern / David Edwards, one of those guys. They've already got their stuff figured out with Spencer Brown and Deion Dawkins, but both David Edwards and Connor McGovern, I believe, are going into their final years on their current contracts. Those feel like very easy extension potential opportunities for them. And then defensively, they got to figure out kind of what they want to do with Rousseau, because obviously that could change things too. That could give you a little bit more money. It wouldn't really do anything with guys like Bernard and Benford, like those guys that really doesn't change anything with. So those are kind of their easy levers to pull. And then they kind of go from there.
The salary cap this year was like $255 million. Brandon Beane said, hey, we don't know if it's going to be $275 million, somewhere in the 260s. They can only go on estimates until, he said last year, we didn't find out until the combine. That is the next item of business for the Bills. It is the combine. Of course, the Senior Bowl is going on, but it's the combine. That's going to be the end of February. Then it will be at the owners' meetings at the end of March. And then it's workouts begin, and then draft visits, and then the draft. And we start this whole thing all over again because Matt Bove loves the offseason.
I love I
do too. I get it. We all play GM in the offseason, which is really cool. It's our chance to play fantasy football with like a real football team.
Yeah, for sure. You can talk about the moves that you like, the moves you don't like. There's almost more stuff to talk about now than there is during the actual regular season. I also love, and I love the schedule. And you do too. We both love the schedule. I already started thinking about games that I think make sense for the Bills and where they fall. I am pretty convinced. So it would be the last home opener at the current stadium. Like it would be the last season opener. It feels like that has to be a home game. Now, well, I guess it doesn't. but it feels like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
I don't think it has to be. I think maybe the last week has to be at home. Maybe the final game has to be more home than the what? Maybe not. I don't know. I would ask you this. It's a good question. Okay, we have a lot more on the schedule we'll talk about in future episodes.
For the next
give me out of these three teams, what's the most likely night game at home?
Oh,
Because they're playing all these teams.
I can
Ravens,
already tell you.
Chiefs, Eagles.
Ravens is going to be a night game. Ravens is good. I think Ravens is going to be the start of the season. I think they're going to play the Ravens on Sunday or Monday Night Football to start the season. It's just it feels like it makes too much sense. So that would be my Ravens prediction. The Chiefs will probably be another 4:25 game on a Sunday in the CBS window. And then the other one you said was Bengals?
No, Eagles.
Okay, Eagles I could see as like a Sunday 4:25 game as well.
There is a Bengals though home, yeah.
Yeah, Bengals will be a Monday Night Football game. I'll put my stake into the ground on that now. That screams Monday Night Football.
All right. Well, listen, we're gonna still be here covering it all. You going anywhere anytime soon?
No, I'm not. No, I'm just gonna try and mellow out for a little bit. I'll tell you. When did we record the last one? Tuesday, Wednesday? When did we record? Tuesday?
Yeah, Tuesday. I think, yeah.
I'm telling you, I got Tuesday night. I got home. I didn't even make it to bed. I fell asleep. On the couch and just like couldn't. I was passed out. I think I slept for 11 hours.
Wow.
I was so exhausted.
Well, I have a vacation coming up, leaving Valentine's Day. So
exciting.
So doing that, going on vacation, and by the way, hey, anybody wants to go to Italy with me? Come on. Who doesn't want to go to Italy?
Yeah.
Me, right? I mean, it's an Odyssey promotion. I don't care. I'll say it on here. I don't think I'm gonna get in trouble or anything, but
I thought about that.
It's Italy, and we're doing it. WGR550.com. You can go there and check it out. And we got like literally like people are buying up spots. It's not like a giveaway. Someone goes, "Oh, you're giving away a trip to Italy with you." I'm like, no. It's like literally 10 days in Italy, me and my family, and and you can buy it, and it's great prices. And we're going to go in 10 days, all these different cities, and it's going to be amazing, and meals and everything's taken care of for you. So check it out. Just look it up. Sal Capaccio, Iconic Italy with WGR, and all the stuff is right there. And we need you to sign up.
Our station used to do it every single year with Linda Pellegrino, if you remember that name. Linda Pellegrino.
Wait, I see Linda once like a month at Odyssey.
Oh, really?
She's great. Yeah, she does stuff with WBEN.
Oh yeah, so we used to do that. I mean, it was way before my time, but every single year they used to do a trip to Italy with Linda Pellegrino, and it was the exact same concept. So I'm sure people are going to get an awesome vacation. And I mean, somebody named Sal Capaccio has to know a thing or two about Italy.
I mean, I'm going to be honest, Matt. They came to me and they go, "Hey, we want to do this. Do you want to go to Ireland, Spain, or Italy?" I'm like, "Dude,
what kind of question? What kind of
Capaccio?
What kind of question is that?
To Italy."
That was ridiculous. Yeah. You should have been like, guys, I want to go to Oklahoma. Can we set that up?
I know, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, go. Hey, if you want to go to Italy with me, it's in July, but you gotta sign up soon. So go check it out and check out the Always Game Day in Buffalo podcast, of course, wherever you pod, and at the YouTube channel at Sal Sports on YouTube. Let's continue to grow the subscribers as we go on this particular offseason. We'll have a lot more content for you. Thanks to our producer, Mike Robier. All right, Matt, I know you got a lot of stuff going on at WKBW TV Channel 7 after the press conferences and all that. So we'll let you get to that, and we hope everybody tunes in next time on It's Always Game Day in Buffalo.